Are between 15 and 20 million people about ready to lose the roof over their head? You let me know. Place your bets, Bulls and Bears. Today's Saturday, July 24th, 2021. So supposedly we have the end of the federal eviction moratorium coming to a close or ending at the end of this month, July 31st. Now I say supposedly because up until now we've seen just nothing but extending and extending and extending again, which is pretty strange considering the narrative has been that we're having an amazing economic recovery. Well, if it's so amazing, why are 15 to 20 million people still worried about losing the roof over their head? Let's talk about it today. And I want to get into some recent numbers here that tell you how dire this picture really is. And then again, please place your bets and let me know what's going to happen at the end of July. I've given you my thoughts on it. I think it's going to be local. Some states have their own version of this eviction moratorium. So in many states, you're not going to see any noticeable difference. Other states, you may see a big uptick in evictions, which is going to be probably causing a lot of unrest and a lot of people basically, taking to the streets and protesting the fact that they didn't extend the eviction moratorium. So we'll have to see how it goes in different states. But let's look at some recent numbers here. This is a recent article. This is the denverchannel.com. As the end of the eviction moratorium looms, tenants fear help will be too late. Now take a look at some of these recent numbers. From this article, according to HUD, and sorry, let me zoom in on this section here. According to Department of Housing and Urban Development, 6.4 million renter households are behind on their rent. 6.4 million households. Now, we looked at the numbers here before. We know it's about 2.5 people. I think it's 2.6 average per household. So we've got 6.4 million multiplied by about 2.6. That brings us to about 16.6 million. And that's when you just look at the number of people that live in households were behind on their rent. Now that was as of the end of March. Now, just because that many people or that many households are behind on their rent doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to lose their home. They may be just a month or two behind, and they may feel like they can get caught up here at some point. Well, let's take a look at a more recent number. As of July 5th, Census Bureau surveyed 3.6 million people said they would likely have to leave their homes in the next 2 months due to eviction. Right, so of the 6 million something households, a little more than half of those feel like they're going to lose their home in the next 2 months. They're going to have to leave their homes. All right, now here's the big problem. We have a lot of assistance going out, a lot of emergency funds being dispersed, which is not going to fix the problem. The problem is that the job losses were not the problem. Yes, they were a part of the problem. People lost their jobs, the shutdowns, the great sickness, etc. Yes, that's part of it. But the underlying problem, the big problem, is the cost of living. Rents should not be as high as they are to begin with. And to paint this with even a broader brush, more people should own their homes free and clear versus what's happening today. Way too many people are renting their homes. Because we have the other issue, which also has to do with the cost of living. Home prices are too high. When people can't afford homes, when people can't afford to buy a home, they're forced to rent. And when rents are not allowed to correct with market conditions, you're going to have big problems just like we see today. And we have to talk about home prices also when we talk about rents because they're interconnected. For example, if market forces were allowed to correct, rents would drop significantly. Many people argue that rents would crash. If you got rid of the moratoriums, yes, there'd be some pain at the beginning. Some people would lose the roof over their head. They may have to move in with a relative, go to a homeless shelter, etc. But you would see rents finally correct to market value, to what people can actually afford to pay. It's called a correction. You see, we've entered this era of banks that do not want to allow corrections. They don't want prices to correct to the mean or to what true supply and demand would actually determine. So after the initial pain, after the correction is allowed to happen, then you would see a recovery and people could actually get into a rental which would be more affordable. And here's something that nobody talks about. I've never heard hardly anyone talk about this. When rents correct, you're also going to see that bleed over into the housing market. Why? Because when somebody can rent a home of a similar size for half the price of what it would cost to buy it, or maybe even less than half the price, maybe 1/4 of the price, it depends on how deep the rental market correction is, how deep prices correct or drop. But when somebody can rent a home for a fraction of the price that it would be to own the home, they're going to choose to rent, and that would take a lot of the juice, a lot of the heat out of the housing market. But when rents are elevated and propped up abnormally high, it's pushing more people to buy because people are thinking, why do I want to pay $2,000 a month rent when I can buy a home for maybe $3,000 a month? Right? See what I'm getting at here? So I don't think anybody's really talking about this that I've heard anyways. But once the rental market is allowed to correct, I think you're going to see some bleed over into the housing market. Now, anything can happen. Again, I'm not predicting this because they can come out and extend it again. They could extend the eviction moratorium for another year, 2 year. Who knows? In a manipulated market, it's not easy to time things. Right? It's not easy to put exact dates on things. And many people argue that you might see a never-ending intervention and the correction will never happen. Many people say that. They say, look at other countries where we saw hyperinflation, the money printing never stopped, prices just kept rising and rising. There was no correction, there was no pullback on the stimulus. Here in the United States, we see QE to infinity now. All right, now here's where it gets really absurd. Take a look at this Business Insider article. And this talks about 6 million renters face eviction in 10 days at the end of July when this current ban expires, and the current president is poised to let it happen. To let it expire. While many people may say, yes, that's good, maybe we'll see finally a correction in the rental market, other people say, no, it's bad because you're going to have people losing the roof over their head. But if you can't afford the roof over your head, and it's a roof that's not yours, you're renting it from somebody else, do you really have the right to say no, do not let the eviction moratoriums end? Right? So I'm putting that question out there, you let me know. All right, but here's where it gets absurd. What is being done here? Well, this article points to what they think may help. Let's scroll down into this article and listen to this. This blew me away. A federal eviction ban is ending July 31st, but the current administration, the Biden administration, rolled out a new measure allowing homeowners to refinance their mortgages. So refinancing your mortgages, how's that going to help a renter? Right? So we're talking about the eviction ban, we're talking about helping renters, but the solution from this administration is to help people refinance their mortgage. Right? How crazy is that? But even if there were more help for renters, aka handouts or payouts, it's still not going to fix the underlying issue that is everything is too expensive. The cost of living is too expensive. Prices are in a bubble because of all the money printing. And because of the moratoriums, prices are not being allowed to correct. We have forces that are controlling markets, that are manipulating markets. Right? We need a free market. We need sound money. Will that happen? I think eventually, yes. But I think we're going to go through some real dark times here in the U.S. before that ever comes to fruition. You let me know what's going to happen at the end of the month. It's going to be different from state to state, city to city. But I'd like to hear from you down on this one here, down in comments. Thanks everybody for being here. Hope you're having a good weekend. Stay well, stay safe, keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.